Good evening, everybody. All right, welcome everybody. I'm Caroline Charles, Community Relations Coordinator with the Planning Commission. Thank you all so much for attending the virtual public meeting today to discuss the City of Tampa's Comprehensive Plan Update. This meeting is just one of the first opportunities to give feedback on the update. There will be a number of other opportunities to provide input as each of the sections moves forward. And if you have not already done so, we do encourage you to complete the vision survey on our website, livegrowththrive2045.com, so we can get your thoughts on each of the vision components. Right after the presentation, we'll have time for a Q&A. We'll answer questions via the question box first and any raised hands after that. I do want to mention this presentation is being recorded and it will be uploaded to our website after the meeting. We're looking forward to hearing everybody's feedback and answering your questions today. So we'll jump right in and get started. Our presenters this evening are Melissa Dickens, and she is the Strategic Planning and Policy Manager for the Hillsborough County Planning Commission, and Stephen Benson, who is the City Planning Director for the City of Tampa. So Melissa, I'll hand it over to you.
Thanks so much, Caroline, for that great introduction. And thank you so much to everyone who's here this evening. We really appreciate you taking time from your evenings, your families, your friends to join us as we talk through the Tampa Comprehensive Plan update and different ways that you can get involved and participate. Again, I'm Melissa Dickens, Strategic Planning and Policy Manager, and I'm joined by Stephen Benson, the City of Tampa City Planning Department Director. Next slide, please. We're going to start out by introducing ourselves to you, a little bit about the agencies that we're representing and how we work together. I'm with the Hillsborough County City-County Planning Commission, often known locally as the Planning Commission. And we are an independent consolidated planning agency. We provide long-range planning and comprehensive planning for all 4 local governments in Hillsborough County. So in addition to the City of Tampa, that also includes the unincorporated county, Plant City, and the City of Temple Terrace. And our agency is responsible for maintaining and updating the comprehensive plan for the City of Tampa. We provide an advisory recommendation from both our staff and our independent appointed citizen board to city administration and city council. City council has final jurisdictional decision-making authority over the Tampa Comprehensive Plan. And we work closely with Stephen and his team. It's important for us to make sure that the comprehensive plan is coordinated with and aligned with the many planning efforts that happen in his department. So we are approaching this plan update from a joint project management perspective.
Thanks, Melissa. And my name is Stephen Benson. I'm with the City Planning Department at the City of Tampa. The City Planning Department was re-established by Mayor Jane Castor in 2020 to really reimagine and strengthen the city's focus and role in long-range planning. We are responsible for facilitating amendments to the Tampa Code of Ordinances, as well as working with the Planning Commission on projects like this, the Comp Plan Update, Comp Plan Amendments, as well as managing a variety of other planning studies and also supporting the implementation of plans. We take the goals, objectives, and policies that are set forth in the comprehensive plan and work with each department that is responsible for implementing those policies to figure out what needs to be done to move forward past planning into implementation.
Next slide, please. So we're going to go over a little bit about the comprehensive plan in general. There are a number of different planning efforts happening all over the city, a number of different studies being conducted, and we wanted to take this time to talk a little bit about the comprehensive plan specifically. It's really an overarching umbrella plan for the entire city, citywide. It's a long-range plan. It typically is 20 to 25 years in the future, and it sets the vision and goals for Tampa into the future. The last time the plan was updated was in 2016 to a 2040 time horizon. We're now looking at an update to a 2045 time horizon. The comprehensive plan includes both policies and maps. Those policies and the mapping guide different aspects of a community's development, looking not only at land use, but also at infrastructure decisions, capital improvement decisions, and preservation as well. And the policies work to look to the future to anticipate the trends in growth and change and the challenges that might be facing the city out to 2045. Next slide. And so, as I mentioned, the comprehensive plan is kind of, I like to think of it as a 35,000-foot look. So it's very broad, it's very policy-based, and then it is implemented primarily the land use section through things like the zoning and the land development code, and then further down through things like the site development and the building code. And other sections of the comprehensive plan are implemented through other things like technical manuals, other regulatory structures, project-based implementation through the capital improvements program. And there are a variety of different sections that are required to be included within a local government's comprehensive plan. Many folks are most familiar with the land use or the future land use section, but there are a number of other sections that also affect the future of the city and the city's decision making. Everything from mobility to water to parks to housing, those are all sections that are included within the comprehensive plan. Next slide. And so we also wanted to share a link to the current plan, the Imagine 2040 comprehensive plan, and that's on the Planning Commission's website at planhillsborough.org/City of Tampa 2040 comprehensive plan. Next slide.
Okay, so as Melissa mentioned, the current comp plan is a 2040 time horizon. So what we are doing with the new comprehensive plan is pushing that time horizon out and looking at what growth and change we expect to see in the city of Tampa out to 2045. So the map on the screen is what we call a generalized growth map. So it's showing you in the different shades of purple the intensity of the growth and change in jobs, residents, and also in housing or homes. The darker purple symbolizes generally that this part of the city is going to see more growth, and then the lighter purple, or the areas that are not purple at all, are the areas where we don't anticipate there being any growth, or we anticipate there being low growth in the 2045 time horizon. Looking at what those numbers mean, we're expecting 77,000 approximately more homes or more housing units. That represents about a 50% increase over what exists today. For residential population, the number of people, population in the city, we expect an additional 108,000 residents, which represents almost a 30% increase in what exists today. And then in terms of jobs, we anticipate a 258,000 more jobs by 2045, and that represents about an 80% increase in the jobs that we have today in the city. And really just looking at these numbers and comparing them, you can see it really underscores and justifies the need for why we're updating this plan and what the purpose is of the plan. For instance, that 250,000 increase in jobs compared to the 100,000 increase in residents, well, that means there's 150,000 more jobs than residents in 2045. How are they going to be getting into the city? How are they going to be working here? What types of transportation systems do we need to be able to accommodate that increase in jobs when we can't necessarily accommodate the increase in residents? Next slide. So looking at what's been done in terms of public outreach, there's been an enormous amount of short-range planning and sub-area planning in the city and strategic planning. So anything from the recently completed non-discrimination and equity plan that Plan Hillsborough put together, to our Resilient Tampa plan that was developed as part of the mayor's vision to transform Tampa's tomorrow, and even the It's Time Tampa Bay, which was the long-range forecasting that developed those projections for housing, jobs, and population that was done in 2016. All of these efforts involve different aspects of public engagement and public outreach. We don't want to reinvent the wheel. We want to take what we've already heard and make sure that all of those comments, all of that input is being funneled into and factored into this comprehensive plan update. Next slide. So if you look across just at the handful of initiatives right here, you can see that there has been thousands of opportunities for folks to give their input and to give comments on various aspects of the planning process. So we're taking all of these different pieces and using it to help us determine what we think the vision is going to be for 2045. Next slide. So in terms of the update process, we were starting with previous plans and outreach. So all of the planning and outreach that was done locally since the last plan update in 2016, taking all that information and using it to develop what we feel like is a pretty good initial draft of the vision themes that are going to be the foundation for the plan. We are taking those vision themes and pushing those out to the community now, to incorporate feedback. Did we get it right? Did we hear you right? What's missing in what we've already put together? And then once we settle on those vision statements and vision themes, those are going to be used to underpin the updates to all of the goals, objectives, and policies in the new plan. Next slide. So what are those themes? On the screen, you'll see the 3 boxes that represent Live, Grow, Thrive. And these are the preliminary themes that we're offering for feedback from you today. And I'm just going to read them aloud to give you a sense of where these are at. So in 2045, we want to see a sense of community and a sense of place in Tampa. We want to see a mix of uses along streets that are complete streets that accommodate all users. We want to see housing and transportation choices for everybody in our community, not just certain groups, certain households, certain individuals. We want to see housing and transportation that accommodates everybody. In terms of growth, we want to make sure that we continue to value and protect our natural environment, and that we use land and other resources like water as efficiently as we possibly can. Additionally, we want to make sure that the infrastructure that we're building and that we're maintaining is accessible to everybody, and the new infrastructure that we build is being planned and also being implemented in a way that's sustainable for future generations. We want to make sure that economic growth is something that is spread throughout our community, and that economic opportunities are provided to everybody in a way that's diverse. And then we also want to make sure that we continue to be resilient to climate-related and other global hazards. So things like storms, pandemics, sea level rise, all of these things are risks, and they're all things that we can plan ahead for to make sure that we minimize how it's going to affect our quality of life in the future. Next slide.
Yeah, thanks, Stephen. Now we're going to talk a little bit about what you're going to be seeing next in terms of the comprehensive plan update. As Stephen mentioned, we're really trying to get as much input and feedback as possible on our vision that's out in the community right now. And we are approaching the update to the comprehensive plan in phases. So these are the first few phases of what you all will be seeing coming forward down the road. So in incorporating the feedback from the public and the comments from the public, we'll then be updating and enhancing the vision and returning to, Tampa City Council for approval through a resolution process. That'll likely take place in early August. Then following that process, we will be looking at the water-related elements of the comprehensive plan. So potable water, wastewater, and stormwater, how we can update and modernize those, link them to the city's resiliency efforts. And that'll be the first portion of the goals, objectives, and policies that we'll be looking at as a staff. And we'll, as Caroline mentioned at the beginning, we'll be continuing to have outreach meetings during each of these processes to make sure that the community has additional opportunities to weigh in. Then in the winter time, we will have a consultant looking at the future land use section and how can the future land use section of the comprehensive plan be enhanced? How can it better represent the input that we're hearing from the community? How can we link it to the vision, make it easier to understand and utilize? And then that will inform later updates to the future land use section. Then in the spring of 2023, we'll be coming forward with mobility section and updates to that aspect of the comprehensive plan. Again, we'll have additional opportunities for input and engagement on that section as well. Next slide. And so we want to hear from you. We want your feedback. The best way to give us the feedback and make sure that we are hearing everything accurately, getting all of the information in one location, is to take our 2045 vision survey. There is a QR code on the screen. It's also available at livegrowththrive2045.com. We have some other information on that website that might be useful to you or your neighbors or your friends. We have an FAQ. We have additional information about the comprehensive plan, additional information about the process. We also have the survey in both English and Spanish. And so we'd ask for your help in helping us make sure that we're hearing from the community. We have hundreds of surveys so far, but we want to make sure that we're getting as much feedback as possible. So we appreciate your help not only in taking the survey, but also helping us to spread the word. We're having both virtual and in-person meetings across the city to try to hear from as many people as possible. Next slide. And so we also wanted to share our contact information. If you have a question about the Tampa Comprehensive Plan update, if you have a question about another planning process, we wanted to make sure that you had our information. You'll see the contact information for Stephen and I, as well as Jennifer Malone, who is co-managing the Tampa Comprehensive Plan update with me at the Planning Commission. Next slide. And so I believe this is our conclusion slide. Again, you can find additional information, take the survey at livegrowththrive2045.com. Also on that page, you can also sign up to receive updates, sign up to receive news about the plan update. Kind of a one-stop shop for community members to find out information and participate in the plan update. And we really, really appreciate your time this evening. We know that everyone has very busy schedules. It's very challenging to get here. So we just want to say thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Thanks, Melissa and Stephen. So we'll move ahead to the Q&A portion. We've got a couple comments thus far, but just a friendly reminder, if you have anything you'd like to ask our panel here, please type in the question box and we'll make sure that your comments are heard. So let's get started. Our first question, comment and question kind of combined, says the comprehensive plan directs growth. Why do you continue to burden the communities that are west of downtown, yet you do nothing to encourage developers to develop north of the city? What are you doing with this comprehensive plan for new developments? Is that continue to plan for strangers to move into our community and do nothing to preserve the residents that have lived here, worked here, invested in their homes, and paid taxes for years? Instead, you treat us as an afterthought. You keep talking about this development being a way to promote economic development, yet not hear. Yeah, sorry, I think it cut off. No. Okay. Can you guys see that question in the chat? Oh. Being a way to promote economic development, yet we do not have the infrastructure in place to support these grand ideas. Sorry, it got cut off a little bit. Okay.
So
Sure.
forgive me, everyone, I'm squinting to try to read the question as well. Appreciate the question. We are addressing aspects of, or the question that you're asking is probably going to be addressed during the future land use section update. Right now, we're really focused on hearing broad feedback from the community. And as we get into that specific section of the comprehensive plan, again, that'll be the future land use section. That'll be the best place for us to be able to really dig in and look at this question and figure out the best way that we can work with the community to address this question and address that concern. So thank you so much. Please take the survey. Please put your information in the survey, and we're going to be going through every single one, and we want to hear from you. So we appreciate you raising that.
Our next question asks, what is the limiting factor that causes the gap in new residents and new jobs? Is that a preference to not live in the city, or because we are not building enough housing for all of our neighbors who want to contribute to our community?
I can take a stab at that. That's a great question. The population and employment projections are developed by the University of Florida, and all of the comprehensive plans in the state generally use the same source for the data that's used, and it's the Bureau. It's called BEBR, the Bureau of Economic and Business Research at UF. That information is prepared for the long-term projections, and then each jurisdiction in the state takes that projection for their jurisdiction, and they divide it up within that planning area. So for Hillsborough, we get the population and employment projections for Hillsborough. That's sort of Hillsborough's share of the state's projection, and then that's then kind of divvied up amongst the jurisdictions within Hillsborough County. And I'm speaking for the Planning Commission, but that's the role that they play and that they do, is that they determine how to assign the population and employment growth that we anticipate based upon the information that we have right now, looking at what the current regulations allow for in terms of density and intensity, looking at what the looking at what the market is indicating in terms of where growth is actually occurring, and then it's still, however, a projection. It's not an accurate, obviously, number because it hasn't happened yet. So it's based upon the best information available at the time, and the data is aggregated at the state level down to the local planning level.
Next question is, how are we making sure that renters and housing insecure individuals are adequately represented in the outreach process?
Yeah, I can take a stab at that. Again, great question. We have a number of community members who are renters within the city, who live in different parts of the city. We have been trying to do a mix of both online and in-person outreach. So we have been at parks, at libraries, at street fairs, to try to make sure that we're hitting places where our residents, whether they rent or own, already are. If they're participating in a neighborhood street fair, we want to be there with our Live, Grow, Thrive 2045 materials to make sure that we're reaching as broad a spectrum of the community as possible. We're also partnering with not only the neighborhood associations, but also the CRAs to make sure that in their citizen subcommittees, to make sure that we're getting the word out to folks in the different areas of Tampa. In some cases, we are also coming with paper surveys to make sure that we're hitting folks who may not have regular access to a computer. And so we're really trying to do as much as possible to make sure that we're hearing from everyone. And we hope that folks who have connections to all communities will continue to help us get the word out, help us share, and help us get everyone to participate in the survey, because the comprehensive plan is truly a plan for all. It's a plan for everyone, and we want to make sure that it represents everyone's feedback.
Our next question asks, how long will the survey be available to take?
I can answer that one. The survey will be available until early June. Actually, I lied. I forgot the exact cutoff date. It's Caroline, it's a Monday in June. I know that, the first Monday, I believe.
I believe it was June 6th.
June 6th, yes. Yeah, the survey will be available until June 6th. The other thing that I'll mention is the survey is only 4 minutes, so it's pretty easy to take. We really tried hard to focus it and make it be an easy process that people could even do on their phones. We have been out in the community visiting with folks since early March, and so we wanted to leave it open to try to make sure that we heard from as many people as possible. Thanks.
All right, our next comment reads, when you speak about land use, it seems City Council has ultimate power and there is no fail-safe when they obviously get it wrong. For instance, allowing a 3-story apartment building next to a residential property on 0 lot line.
So I think that might be more of like a zoning related question, but in terms of how land use affects those decisions, I think it's important to understand where the land use authority comes from. And so the authority for land use actually comes from the state. State law is what gives local jurisdictions the ability to regulate the use of land and to establish things like zoning codes. So, to answer it simply, City Council they are the decision maker because they are the elected body that ultimately approves not just project by project if that's what comes before them, but also this update that we're working on now will also eventually go to City Council to consider for approval.
Our next question is, if the 2016 comprehensive plan was somewhat similar to this one, what happens to neighborhoods like Sulphur Springs, which has been neglected even before that?
So I'll start, and Stephen may be able to chime in. So we are taking a more robust, I think would be the word, look at the comprehensive plan. The 2016 update was really focused on tweaks and quick fixes. It was intended to be the first phase of a more substantive update to follow. We do not want that to be the case this time. We want to really look at everything holistically. There's been a lot of change, in the city, not only in the past decade, but even since 2016, even since 2020, there's been a lot of new pressures that are coming into the city. A lot of folks in the city are struggling with things like housing affordability. People are seeing changes in their neighborhoods, and we want to really make sure that we're not just tweaking and tinkering with the existing adopted comprehensive plan, but that it is a holistic update. And that's one of the reasons that we're really trying to make sure that we're out in the community and hearing from people, getting feedback, because sometimes, planners, we don't see everything. We're not in every neighborhood. We're not seeing all of the different things that residents of our community are dealing with. And so we want to try to be able to hear from everyone so that when we do go through this holistic process, we can examine some of those things that need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I'll just add that if you're curious about how planning evolves into implementation, I would encourage you to take a look at some of the prior comprehensive plans, because they don't all look the same. And some of the older comprehensive plans talk about the fact that at one time there was no housing downtown. And now obviously that's not the case, but that came about, that the transformation and the revitalization of downtown Tampa is just one example of the growth and change that occurred over a long period of time. And a lot of the fundamentals and really the vision behind that was factored into prior comprehensive plan updates. So that's really what we're focused on. It's not that immediate project that's coming tomorrow or coming in a year or two. It really is that 25-year planning horizon. That's really our goal, is to focus on that. So that's the purpose of this whole effort.
Our next question is, do you have statistics as to accidents with the bike paths installed without any barriers next to high traffic roads such as Hillsborough Avenue?
We do, not necessarily right now to share with you, but one of the major elements that we're going to be updating is the mobility element of the plan, which is the transportation section of the plan. And the city, in parallel to this, is going through a process of creating a citywide mobility plan that Vision Zero, which is our goal to eliminate all traffic fatalities and serious injuries, is going to be a huge part of. And looking at where all of our crashes and fatalities are, and coming up with strategies and projects and ideas to crank that down to zero is going to be a big part of what the mobility section of the plan is all about. And we try to use the word part of Vision Zero is philosophical. It's looking at crashes as if they're all preventable. So that's why we use the term crash and not accident, because accidents aren't preventable. It's just one way that, beyond policy, we look at messaging, we look at infrastructure. And that's something that starts at the long range plan level and then works its way down into shorter term projects and other shorter term planning processes.
Our next question asks, how does the comp plan update account for potential transportation investments that could happen in the future, which maybe aren't final now? For example, BRT or even rail. Does it try to focus only on existing infrastructure, permitting updates to the plan when those projects actually materialize?
So part of the long-range planning process includes the long-range transportation plan, which is developed by the TPO, or the Transportation Planning Organization, which is part of Plan Hillsborough. They work closely with the Planning Commission. And if you've looked at the long-range transportation plan, it's a federally mandated plan that looks at transportation investments over a similar long-range period of time. As part of the comp plan, we will look at those long-range investments in transportation and try to align the land use element of the plan and the other elements of the plan around where those transportation investments are going to go. Prior plans have looked at previous proposals for transit and for transportation investments and tried to focus the land use intensity and the land use density in the land use element around where those transportation improvements are going. And there still is some language like that in the current plan, but we'll be looking at that and where those areas should be when we get into the land use section update and the mobility section update.
Our next question asks, how will the comprehensive plan promote a greater diversity of housing options? Will the comprehensive plan include provisions for missing middle housing?
I can start that out, and then Stephen, if you want to jump in. So that is going to be addressed and looked at in the housing section of the comprehensive plan. I know Stephen's team is working on a number of different housing initiatives that are looking at different ways to incorporate different housing types into the city. Again, any feedback on that through the survey would be the best way for us to make sure that we collect that information and hear that information. And then we'll be taking a look at the feedback and the input and be incorporating that into the housing element or the housing section when we address that. And Stephen, I didn't know if you wanted to add anything about some of the stuff that your team's working on.
Sure. Yeah, I'll just add that we are very focused on looking at different types of housing, especially types of housing that we're not necessarily seeing a lot of right now, even in this high demand housing market. Things like accessory dwelling units and duplexes, triplexes, quadplexes, housing solutions that aren't necessarily a detached single family house, but also aren't necessarily a high-rise apartment building. There's a range of different types of housing in between that frankly you can see in a lot of our legacy housing stock, in some of our historic neighborhoods, and some of the old streetcar suburbs. You see different types of housing. So that's one of the things that we will be looking at, is where are we going to be in 2045 in terms of the future population breakdown. We know there are demographic changes that are slowly happening as generations get older, and with that comes changes in housing preference, in household size, and household composition. What are the housing needs that we have today, but also what are the housing needs that we're going to have in 2045, and how should we craft the plan to accommodate that shift in population and that shift in demand? That's really what we'll be focused on answering in the short term, to develop some strategies for how to deal with our existing housing crisis, but also what are some long-range strategies we can take and incorporate into this comprehensive plan update. We'll be doing both of those things here in throughout the next year.
We have another housing question. So as far as the housing crisis is concerned, how can you expedite the city permitting process to make it faster and easier for contractors to make homes ready for purchase? IT is now taking months and months to get a simple rehab done due to so many regulations.
Stephen, do you want me to? Okay. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that looking at the rate of housing production and how quickly we're able to respond to increases in demand is certainly something we can consider from a long-range standpoint. It's really hard, though, 25 years in the future, to predict what the market's going to be demanding and what the supply and demand issue is going to be that far out. But especially from an immediate issue like can I get a building permit today? That's something really hard to predict 25 years into the future. So we can look at strategies for maybe how other jurisdictions are doing that from a long-range planning standpoint, but that's really more of a short-term operational issue.
Next question says, so many of the Tampa roads are state roads. Is FDOT participating in Vision Zero?
I can try to answer that. Yes, FDOT does have, I think, a program, and theirs is, it may not be exactly called Vision Zero, but it's, I want to say towards zero deaths, or another type of aspirational goal that really focuses on the idea that just one injury or fatality is one too many. And part of the challenge is that a lot of the funding that comes from the state for transportation and for roads is for roadway widening, which we are not doing a lot of on our surface streets in Tampa. We're really focused on pedestrian, cyclist, transit, how to make our street system more part of the community, more part of the public realm, and less of a transportation thoroughfare. And FDOT, I can say, has been a great partner so far in helping us achieve that. A lot of the transportation projects that you see out in the community today on our city streets, you know, are at minimum usually partnerships with FDOT. So you'd be hard pressed to find a project in the city that hasn't received some sort of support or incentive from FDOT to get in the ground, and that includes a lot of our safety projects as well.
Our next comment says, I'm fortunate enough to live downtown where I rarely need to drive. Looking at projected growth, will walkability be a part of future plans to reduce the need for driving as more people move to the city?
I can take a crack at that. Yeah, the walkability will be something that is kind of going to be looked at in a couple of different places in the comprehensive plan. We really want to get away from having land use and transportation in separate silos. You know, they're truly integrated in the community. Walkability is a function of both. And so that is something that we're going to be taking a look at in terms of both the future land use section as well as the mobility section update. The mobility section update will be the first place to participate and have you know, that topic of discussion be addressed. And I feel a bit like a broken record, but really want to encourage everyone to make sure to put their comments and their desires into the survey for us. And then when we get to that section, that's where we'll be looking at walkability, housing types, all of the different things that have come up this evening. So thank you so much for your question.
Okay, next question. The current comp plan states that South Tampa is characterized by 1, environmental qualities that would be compromised by increased urbanization, 2, limited access to transportation facilities, which would be resource inefficient to improve, 3, limited opportunities to create more community facilities, open spaces, or services to meet increased demand, and 4, unstable or flood-prone land. Will 2045, the question is, will 2045 direct growth away from South Tampa?
So I can jump in and say that we haven't really gotten that far yet. We're still in the initial phases, and really appreciate everyone's passion and everyone's questions. I see Jennifer Malone had jumped in. She may have something she wants to add, but I wanted to say that we're going to be looking at all of those things, all of the current language that's in the comprehensive plan, but we don't want to, make decisions or start going down a path or start looking at really substantive things until we hear from the community. So we're just not really at a point yet where we have an answer for that.
Okay. Our next question asks, is there a way to challenge the state law that took away the city's power to protect our tree canopy?
Wish we had an attorney on the call. That may be a question that we might need to get back to you on. That may be something that, maybe if you can send us an email, and we can try to point you in the direction of the resources for that. That would be outside of the comprehensive plan scope. So, the comprehensive plan is locally focused, and then the elected officials in Tallahassee are the folks who are responsible for the state legislation that makes changes to local government authority and jurisdiction. So that would be something kind of outside of this process. We may be able to, point you to who you would need to talk to, but that's kind of outside of our scope.
Do we have that contact slide? Maybe we could go back to that. So.
Yeah, I would just add that just so we're clear, the underpinning of the tree code exists because and is supported by language in the current comprehensive plan that demonstrates how the community values our tree canopy. So again, kind of going back to, we can't tell you what's in the 2045 plan because we haven't written it yet. And to write it, we need to get your input about what should be in it. So that's, you know, it would be good. It would be good if you feel strongly about that to put that in the survey and make sure that it's very clear that we still need to be looking for ways to strengthen and grow our tree canopy beyond what's being done with state legislation.
Our next question asks, how will the comp plan address changing parking space requirements to allow better urban density?
So I think most of that is, you know, a lot of the parking stuff is handled through the code. The details, you know, if the comp plan is 35,000 feet, then the code is where aspects that pertain to the specifics on parking would be located. The comprehensive plan can make general statements or general goals, objectives, and policies that speak toward a certain direction. And again, the survey would be the place to make sure that we hear that. But the comp plan could give kind of 35,000 foot direction, depending on, you know, community input, and then the code would be where that is addressed in more detail.
Okay, and our next question asks, some neighborhoods had designated subsections in the current comp plan. This gave neighborhood associations some strength and effectiveness with presenting questions and issues in front of TCCs. Will the new comp plan include these neighborhood-specific sections?
Yeah, I think, you know, kind of going, I hate to be a broken record, but going back to if the community feels like we should have neighborhood specific language in the plan, then that's something that we'll really try to do. It sounds like that's been something that you've found valuable and useful. And so please put that in the survey so that we have the backing to kind of keep that same model in place, or maybe look at adding more sections for other neighborhoods. I mean, these are all things that we can look at as long as we have the support and the justification to do so.
Okay, our next question is, what can we do as a community to communicate during this process that housing affordability is a top priority for the plan rather than one priority of many?
So there's a few different ways. Certainly you all have heard us mention the survey, so that's a great way. Also, the public is certainly welcome at Planning Commission and Tampa City Council meetings to share perspective on the housing components of the comprehensive plan. We're also, like walkability, housing affordability is really, there's a number of different things that influence and affect it. And so we want to make sure that we're looking at all of the different factors. There are so many different things that contribute to it. There's also, some things outside of the comprehensive planning process that contribute to housing affordability as well. But where we can within the comprehensive plan, our previous outreach has, shown us that housing and transportation for all is a priority. And so we want to look at the best ways to do that. But again, the participation through the survey and then through your appointed and elected officials would be a great way to do that.
Okay, so looking at the question box, I think we answered all of the ones in there that I'm looking at, but Melissa and Stephen, if I missed one, please let me know. Looking at the raised hands, I see Stephen Gainer has his hand raised, but I know you also had a question in the question box as well. So Stephen, I'll unmute you, and if you wanted to make an additional comment, you may go ahead.
No, you answered my question.
Okay, great. Thank you. All right. I'm looking again at the raised hands. I'm not seeing any other hands raised. I'm not seeing any other questions in the question box. So I think that wraps up our Q&A session.
And I think we did have about 30 folks on the line tonight. I know that was a question earlier.
Yes.
Yeah, we also we've recorded this. So please, if you had a neighbor or a friend who wasn't able to make it, we're going to be posting this on the website. And then there's other information that's on the website as well. So they'll be able to watch this meeting and hear the presentation and learn more. Because we know that we had a great deal more folks registered, and things come up. People have very busy lives, so we want to try to be as flexible as possible to provide an opportunity for everyone to hear the information.
All right. Thank you, Melissa and Stephen, for your presentation, and everybody that joined us this evening. We loved hearing all of your questions and feedback. So thank you again for joining us and spending some time with us today. Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thank you.